For those of you who don't know me, my name is Josh, and I am honored and privileged to be one of the pastors here to be able to serve this congregation. And we are so excited to be able to talk about foster care. So this is something that we do every November. Obviously, we talk about foster care, we talk about adoption, we talk about these things, taking care of the widow and the orphan throughout the year. But we dedicate one Sunday every November to talk about this specifically for the whole service. And this is because we do believe that it is so important to the heart of God, and it's important to this region. It's important to us as believers. And so I want to take a minute. We're going to introduce ourselves. Everybody up here's got a foster care and adoption story, and so we're excited to be able to share it with you guys. For those of you who were looking at my questions here, I'm going to kind of combine the first two. So first of all, who are you? What's your current role in foster care? And how did you kind of get involved with foster care in the first place? I'll start. My name is Josh. This is my beautiful wife, Tori. We've been foster parents for 3 years now. We were licensed in November 3 years ago. We've had 4 placements, 2 of whom we are in the very beginning steps of adopting, and we are super grateful to be able to do that. We've really had foster care on our hearts since we started dating a decade ago, and you know, we took a few years after we got married, but then we jumped in, and it's been great. Did you have anything to add to that? Awesome.
I'm Jessica, and this is my husband, Brandon. So we've been foster parents for 6.5 years. We've had 2 placements. The first one lasted almost a year, and then the second one lasted 9 months, I think. But we still have Emma from our first placement there. She's with us forever now. I don't know what else to say. Is that it? Is that it?
Yeah, you answer the question.
I don't know if I answered the question or not.
My name is James. I'll skip ahead to my current role, and then Heather can share a little bit how we got started. So I am currently an adoption worker for NOAS. It's a private adoption agency in Warren. So I'm more on the adoption side of things. I don't deal with the foster care side so much. My role is to kind of find resources for children to get adopted. So that's my current role right now. Do you want to share kind of how we got started?
Sure.
So I've always had a heart for adoption. And so when we were thinking about getting married, that was a conversation we had of like, could this be something that's part of our life, foster care and adoption? And so 10 years ago, actually, we accepted a job in Tucson, Arizona, working for a foster care agency where we lived in one of their homes. They owned 14 homes all throughout Northwest Tucson, and we lived there full time, and we fostered about 8 to 10 kids at a time, and it was mostly teenage boys, and we oversaw their semi-independent living program, so we helped them like get jobs, bank accounts, and so that when they aged out of the system that they were stable and had everything taken care of. And so we did that for a few years, and we fostered just over 50 children.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm Rocky's mom. I think, didn't you guys have 5 placements? Because Rocky was your first placement, right?
Yeah, we never had.
That's not a place?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought Aria was, never mind. So, Rocky went to foster care when I went to drug and alcohol rehab, and it was in the middle of COVID. And I had never had any experience with CSB or the foster care system, so I was imagining really horrible things were happening to her in foster care, because that's just what I thought happened to kids if that happened to them. And when I finally got to meet her foster parents over Zoom because of COVID, they were Josh and Tori, and they were the sweetest people. They prayed for me. I think that was the first time that anybody ever prayed for me. And they didn't pray for anything except for me to get better and us to reunify. And it was really amazing. Like, I could breathe a sigh of relief knowing that she was being really well taken care of. She was happy and had a little bow or flower on, and like it was just a really good experience. And when she came home, they had my back every step of the way and invited me to come to church. And they would come pick me up. Their family would come pick me up because I didn't have a car at the time. They would pick me and Rocky up and bring us to church. And now you guys really are Rocky's village. Thanks.
And what do you do now?
Oh, so now I work as a peer supporter at CSB with parents who have substance use disorder.
Awesome. So Jen is currently now working for Trumbull County Children's Services. Brandon also is a double threat up here. He was adopted himself. As much as he looks like Scott and Peggy, he was adopted. What's one misconception? I know, Jen, you kind of touched on this, but what's one misconception that you feel people have about the foster care system that you wish that people knew was a misconception? Tor, we'll start with you, putting you on the spot.
I think that for me, like in my limited experience, especially compared to, a lot of people up here, I think that something that I hear often, actually, I'll just say two. One thing is that people say that they are scared that they will get too attached to the kids that come into their home. I just want to just throw this out there. Getting attached is a good thing. Kids in the system need somebody to say, like, I don't care if it hurts me when you leave. I don't care if it comes at great cost to myself. I'm going to be your parent for this time that you need a parent. And then when it is my time to send you back to your biological connections, that might hurt a lot, but I don't care. I'm going to do it anyways. So that would be the first thing, is that people say, like, oh, I'd be afraid I'd get too attached. Like, that sounds funny to someone like me. I'm like, you're basically saying I'm afraid I'd do a great job at it. And then the other thing that I hear a lot is people saying, I fear that my biological kids might be hurt somehow through this. They might be exposed to things that I don't want them to be exposed to, and that is a fear that people have, and it's justified. But I think as Christians, we believe that that foster care and adoption is biblical. The Bible says all throughout Old Testament and New Testament, care for the widows and orphans, care for the marginalized. And what a great opportunity for your biological children to just be front and center to watching you live out the gospel. I would almost argue it's dangerous for you to not do that. It's dangerous for you to, like, keep your kids from watching you live out the gospel. So that's my two biggest fears that I hear.
I can go next. I think there's an idea that you have to be at the right stage of life all the time. And there's so many different children in different walks of their life and different needs that need to be met. And I think everyone in this room is in a different stage of life, and there is also a child that goes along with that stage that you are in. I have so many grandmother figures that I place my children with, that I work with. I have single parents that get placed with them. I have families that have 6 biological kids. So whatever stage of life you are in, don't feel like, oh, I have to wait till this happens, because we have thousands of waiting children in Ohio. Just in my agency, in my department, there's 200 kids up for adoption right now in a little private agency in Warren. So don't think that, oh, I'll just wait till X, Y, and Z line up. Because right where you're at right now, there's usually someone out there that could line up with whatever stage of life that you are in. So I think that's...
I can confirm a conception of foster care is that it's really hard, but anything worth having is worth working for, I think. Same thing as marriage, right? It's not always going to be perfect, but if you work at it, through the hard times, it makes the good times even that much better. And so working through the foster system with these children who, depending on their situation, just need someone in their lives to love them, it's difficult, but it's awesome. Yeah, does that make sense?
I want to share one from a biological parent's standpoint. I have a 10-year-old daughter named Rhodey who lives in New Jersey. She was adopted by my dad and his ex-wife when she was 1, and I haven't seen her since she was 3. And when I was, back at the beginning, when she first went to live with them, I didn't get CSB involved, and I was terrified of foster care, and I thought that was the best thing for everybody. But then it turned out I just couldn't do well enough in their eyes to ever get her back. So if I'd known then what I know now, I think I would have gotten CSB involved and tried to reach out to foster parents because just in my experience, when Rocky was in foster care, I had the support of the agency and people that really cared about reunification rather than, the motives of my biological connections that really didn't want me to do well.
Yeah, so there's misconceptions really on both sides from the biological families, and really, honestly, I think a lot of people, churchgoers, etc., think of foster families as people who are like just in it for the money or whatever. And to be honest, if you're worried about money, that's another misconception. You do get a little bit of a stipend. We get some money towards clothing every month. We get a stipend. We get WIC. We get all kinds of things to help us. So if you're like, hey, I just can't afford it, chances are you can, because they do help you out. But there are misconceptions or stereotypes from both sides. People looking at foster families and think, man, they're the worst. Or people looking at the foster kids and thinking, man, they're the worst, or the biological families. And to be honest, sometimes they're not so great, which is why we need people who are going to decide, you know what, I'm just going to do this because I love the Lord and I've got the best intentions, right? We need people who are willing to say, hey, I'm going to lay myself down for this, like Brandon was talking about. Otherwise, it's going to be the people who are in it for the money, or it's going to be the people in different lifestyles that maybe we don't support, who are like, hey, this is the only way that I can have a kid. And so, when we as Christians decide to step in and say, hey, I'm going to raise them to follow Jesus, and we surround them with a supporting group of people who are going to bring them into the kingdom and show them the love of God, it's going to change their lives, and it's going to create a system that's sustainable. And so we need people who love the Lord to step into this. And by the way, I just want to make a quick mention here that we're not the only ones, even in this church, who are involved with this. We've got other people who have adopted, other people who have fostered here in this room. So I want to thank you for those of you who have done that and or are doing that. You're not unseen. We had only so much space on the panel, and this is who we have up here. But we love you, and we're thankful for your dedication to the Lord in this way. Yeah.
See if I can word it correctly. So a place where I used to work, they didn't really agree with me, I guess, being a foster parent, because it took me away from work once in a great while. But when we were going through a situation where we were getting Lila, so I don't know if Lila was never in the foster care system, but we had her foster siblings. So when her mom became pregnant, she knew she didn't want to keep the baby, so she asked if we would adopt her. So that's how we got Lila. She was never in the foster care system. But anyways, people seem to think that biological parents are bad and bad parents, which maybe sometimes they are, but not all biological parents are bad or evil, or they don't recognize that we're only there for a short time. We're not there to steal these kids, I guess. I don't know. But the people I worked with, so another mom had become pregnant. So they were like, so you're going to get that baby too, aren't you? I was like, no. I was like, she's not a bad mom. Like, she was in a situation for a little while. She got better. That's the whole point, I guess. I don't know if I worded that.
No, that's great.
Can I add on to something you were saying earlier, just about and Joey mentioned it too, with kind of the command for the church to step in is, now let me preface this, I'm thankful for the government and all the assistance they bring, because there are a lot of assistance out there for foster families and adoptive families too. If you don't know the history, I mean, orphanages were tied to churches originally, so they were Christian organizations. And just slowly through time, the church doesn't fulfill the commands that God has placed on us. And therefore, and I'd say unfortunately, meaning the government stepped in, meaning that the church hasn't done its part in this. The church has failed a lot of ways in this. As a whole, there is a crisis. There's an ongoing crisis for the past, I think it's 30 years now, where we're running out of placements for kids. They're sleeping in offices in counties right now because there's not enough foster placements. Mahoning County specifically is one of them. I mean, we have very poor environments that we're putting these children in. And it's not to make anyone feel guilty. I'd never want anyone to do anything out of guilt. But the current statistic is if 5% of every church in America took on the foster care system, we wouldn't have a single kid in a group home, in a residential facility, sleeping in an office. 5%. So that's what, 5 families here, which I think we're a successful church here in that mindset. But there's churches with thousands of people. I mean, we went to one. I don't think they knew anything about the foster care system. And it's unfortunate. So it's just to encourage us as a body. I'm thankful to be a part of a church that is stepping in that, because it's sad working in it, seeing the current state that we are in, relying on the government, honestly, to fulfill a need that the church should be stepping in. And any injustice, right, when the government has to step in, that's usually the church's responsibility, if I'm just being blunt here. So kudos to everyone that is stepping in that. I applaud you, because it is difficult. It's not an easy task to take on. It's you're laying down a lot of your own personal time, your own personal goals, your family structure. I mean, you're rearranging. So I just wanted to plug that in to kind of just encourage the church to continue to step into that role that we're commanded to do.
Just to add to what you're saying, James, I look across the landscape of America, and one of the things that's just ravishing our children is fatherlessness and abortion. And the best way that we as Christians can combat that is to care for widows and orphans. And I'm pretty black and white in things like this. So like, if you believe something hard enough, you'll do something about it. And again, this isn't condemnation of any sort, right? But I really think that, like James was saying, the church has failed in a lot of ways, and we can do better.
I do want to reiterate kind of what both of these guys were saying. One of their points is that, our goal here isn't to convince you or pressure you or manipulate you into getting involved, but it is to present a real issue that the Lord really does care about and that we really can step into. And it is super difficult. To be honest, going to church on Sundays is actually really easy. Can I be really honest? Like, this is a comfortable environment. Maybe you have to talk to somebody you don't feel comfortable talking to, but like you get to go home an hour later, right? When you've got kids in your house who aren't your kids, and they're maybe influencing your kids or making your life more difficult, guess what? You don't get to just go home and go away because like they're home, right? They're at your home. And there are a lot of challenging situations, like they were talking. Familial structure is like a really big thing, right? Like Tori and I, we've had enough foster kids now, and we haven't even had that many. But it's like we recognize that all of these parents could get pregnant and have more kids, or they could whatever, and they still maybe can't take care of them. Not all of them, of course. We've got Jen here, who's amazing. And it's like, boom, in an instant, our lives are changed. Like, we have to restructure our lives and figure out what are we doing here. And that's not to say, like, every time one of our foster kids' parents have a child, we have to take them. We have a say in it. But for us, that's something that we're committed to, is taking siblings and taking in family groups. Somebody once said in one of our foster care classes, they were like, why is it so important to take in family groups and siblings? And they said, if you have a sibling, raise your hand. And I'm going to do this real quick. If you have a sibling, raise your hand. That's why it's important. Almost every person in here has a sibling. And like, you probably can't imagine your life without them. For those kids, that's their only biological connection. And so, again, I'm not saying like, hey, you have to, if you get involved, you have to take sibling groups, but it's important. These are things that matter. And so I do want to reiterate, again, we're not pressuring you. We're not saying, hey, you have to do this, but there is a real need, and we do have a real way to respond to that. Man, there's so many other things that you guys said that I want to talk about. But let's go on to the next question here. How has your journey affected your immediate and extended families? I'll start. We had family who more or less was not thrilled about the idea of us doing foster care for their own reasons. They were worried about us. They were worried about themselves getting too attached to the kids and what have you. They're good reasons, right? And now I think if you were to ask any of our family, they'd be like, man, I can't imagine life without these kids anymore. And it really is, this is one of those things where it's really scary and it is really difficult, but literally, like, once you're in it, you're like, I cannot fathom the idea that I would have passed up on this. This is so much more fulfilling than I really ever expected. I saw, Jen, you were about to share. Did you have something?
Yeah. So since Rocky was in foster care, like her foster parents and their family literally has become my immediate family. But I think being able to start coming to church and start having, a walk with Jesus has changed my whole life. And it took a long time. It took about a year for my mom to come around. But my mom and I have a great relationship today. And I'm actually, the weekend, not directly after Thanksgiving, but the next weekend, I'm going to take a road trip to New Jersey to see my dad and my older daughter, and it'll be the first time that they meet Rocky. And it's all because of these guys fostering Rocky.
If you guys don't know Jen, if you're not motivated in your life, just have a 5-minute conversation with Jen, and you'll get motivated about life. She's an incredible person. There's a movie called Instant Family. Have you guys seen this movie? Is there anybody else out there who's seen Instant Family? It's a movie about a family who goes into foster care, and it's actually pretty accurate to what we've experienced. Like they have this scene where they're sitting with their family, and they're like, "This is a bad idea. This is the worst." And then the mom's just like, "I don't care what you say. We're doing this now." And it just turns out just having the kids in their lives changes their whole family, right? Their whole mindset about it changes, and they recognize the pain of maybe having the children go home, but they love them regardless, right? Our lives are not the same. Our house is very loud. Our parents have more grandchildren. I can't imagine living life without Emma and Lila. It wouldn't be, like, it's just unfathomable to think about them not being there, right?
So we were very fortunate that when we began fostering, when we went to both sides of our family and said, hey, we're like packing our bags and we're moving across the country and we're going to foster 8 to 10 kids at a time, that they were all like, okay, like, no pushback. So I think that they were excited for us because they saw that we were excited. I think obviously our parents, especially like our mothers, every mother has some concern for their child when they go and do something new. So I saw some apprehension of like, are you sure you want to move across the country and do this? But generally speaking, like our family was like super supportive. And then because that season of our life was on the other side of the country, there was some separation between like our immediate family and what we were doing. But his mom and my mom did come down and spend some time with us when we were there. And my mom fell in love with some of the kids. And we had like a pizza night because my mom used to own a pizza shop when I was younger. And her and my mother-in-law just became grandma to these kids. And they don't have grandmas, and they took a very well liking to both of them. So it was a very positive experience during that season for our family. We were fortunate that we were really supported, which helped us going into something like that to have that support. So if you directly aren't going to be fostering, but you know somebody who is, just that support vocally and emotionally is so important, because when you foster, there is a time where it could feel very lonely. And there's a lot of emotions because we're all human, there's a lot of emotions that go in through that process. And so having that sounding board of safe people to go to and to talk to is super key. And so it was really great for us that we had that.
Last question here. What do you want people to know about getting involved?
How long do you have?
I could go again. Oh, I can go and then I can pass it to you. Okay. I would just say, like, what I wish I knew before going into it is not everything is a Hallmark movie. These are real children with real pain and have experienced things that we could never imagine. And I remember specifically we fostered a teenage girl who was going through the court system because her father did things to her that I can't ever even verbally repeat. And she was having to testify against him in court. And I remember one night she sat after the court system was done and the trial was done and they were waiting for sentencing. She looked at me one night, we were sitting outside, and she was like, do I have to forgive my father? And it's like, it's really easy to look at somebody. Like, prior to this, I was a youth pastor for kids in suburbia, okay? Like, their biggest issue was that they got their cell phone taken away from them for a week. So to be sitting outside with a girl who had her body tied up for days and had to testify in court about what was done to her, ask me, do I have to forgive my father? And it just hits you really hard in your spirit, and that's something that I've never forgotten. And it was in those moments that I realized that, like, I really have to rely on the Lord's strength and not my own. Because in my flesh, I wanted to be like, no, can I go kill him for you? Like, I mean, those are just natural feelings, right? And it's like that justice anger, that righteous anger. But having a really great conversation with her about the Lord and how he's the one that serves justice. And it's his job to judge, and it's our job to forgive. And I encouraged her that forgiving your father is not clearing him of his debt. It's freeing you from what he did to you. And what he did is between him and his father that he will have to answer for. So I wasn't prepared for that going into this. I didn't realize the depth of the pain that these kids have carried, especially because we fostered mostly teenagers. So they had well over a decade of trauma. And so just knowing that you can't do it by your own strength, that you have to rely on God's strength to get through those tough times.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think, because we were in traditional ministry prior to this, and, after doing traditional church ministry and then stepping into foster care, I mean, if you want real ministry in your life, that was it. I mean, it's literally the battlefield coming into your home with situations like that. So I think it really molded us and shaped us with really what we thought about ministry, after going to theological school and then, stepping into this. It was just, I don't think we were prepared for it to the fullness, but just living it out really taught us what it was like to do ministry, like Jesus did, allowing those people into your life and helping shape them and mold them and lead them and walk with them through all the trauma and terrible events that they've been through. And I guess I'll to continue to answer that question, what I want you guys to know. My agency, we license families to foster, so I'll put a plug in. If you want to know any practical information on what that looks like where do I start? You can gladly reach out to my organization, NOAS, N-O-A-S. We're in Warren. It's a great company I'm thankful to be a part of. We walk you through every step. We teach the classes, and then we provide support for you after that too. So we license to foster and adopt. So if that's something you're just curious about, come to me after. I'll gladly give you my work phone number so we can chat about it if you want any more information. Other than that, I mean, just to encourage you all to, there's other ways you can get involved into if that is overwhelming for you. We have a mentorship program at my organization if you just want to kind of see what it's like to work with that population, because it is different. If you're not familiar with it, it's a good way. You could sign up to be a mentor, work with the kids in our population. I think it's 6 hours a month that you're signing up for. Just you literally pick them up, hang out with them, go do something fun with them. It's a really cool opportunity to kind of, get them out of that, because a lot of these kids are overwhelmed with the amount of workers and people that are involved in their life. So you kind of get to be that separate support where you just, hey, let's go hang out and have some fun, meet my family, go to Dave & Buster's, something fun like that. So, any questions you have for the logistical side after that, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it.
Does Pennsylvania have the mentorship programs? Do you guys know that?
I have no idea.
I know in Ohio that's a standard for all the counties, but I wasn't sure.
We're not licensed through the county.
Okay.
We're licensed through a private agency.
Gotcha. By the way, plug for NOAS. We did our pre-service classes at NOAS and reached out to them for how to get involved. So actually, I think we called you guys when we were first starting to pursue it. So
I would say the thing that I would want everyone to know, how many in this room feel like, oh, I'm kind of on the fence. I feel like this might be something I might want to do in the future. Raise your hand. Anybody feel like, okay, the fact that you have the privilege to think about, oh, is this something that would fit into my life? Is this something I want to do? That's something that kids in the system don't have. They don't have the choice to say, do I want to be removed from everything I've ever known, put into a place that I have no idea who any of these people are? Maybe some of them are dangerous, maybe not. I have no idea. Kids in the system don't have that privilege to make that choice. And so when you're weighing it out, like, there's a lot of like things that go into the decision whether to do it or not. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, like, there are kids that need homes, and that should trump everything. Every single reason that you can come up with that maybe it doesn't fit for my life or my work schedule or my, like, all of that, but like it all boils down to one thing. Like, do you want to see a child who is a child in the most vulnerable state of their life, doesn't have a voice for their own? Do you want to see them in a safe home? Do you want to provide a home and parents for them in a time when they really need it the most? I know that's hard to hear. I know that's very blunt, but for me, that's what it boils down to at the end of the day. That's all there is.
Anybody else like to share what they want people to know? Okay. We're gonna wrap this up. There are many ways to get involved with the foster care system, with adoption. We're going to have cards for you guys with different ways to get involved. The ushers will have them at the doors after service. But there's ways to get involved. There will be, different myths listed, some resources. There's everything from the mentorship program, where you're looking at a few hours a month, to how do you actually get started with foster care, to maybe you want to adopt. Can I just say this? The main thing that we all need to remember when doing this is that we aren't doing this because we have to. We're doing this because Jesus has been so good to us, because the Father has adopted us into his family, and we get to reflect his character here on the earth, and that means bringing others into our family. And so for some people, maybe that doesn't look specifically like foster care. Maybe you literally are inviting people just to be part of your family who don't have family, right? So I'll just say this about Lisa Jurgen, right? We go there for most holidays, and almost every time there's somebody else who's just joining our family for the holidays, right? So that's part of her heart, is just to bring people into her family. Foster care is a real way that we can just do that, literally speaking, where it's not just, hey, we're friends, and I want to invite them over, but it's like you're literally coming in to be part of my family. A couple of things that maybe you don't know about it. You do get a lot of control over what ages you want to bring in, genders, if you have specific genders, things like that. You're not just thrown in and, hey, here's 6 teenagers. You've got a lot of say in this. So I want to encourage you. There are people in this room who the Lord is calling to take up this mantle, to take in children, to give them a home, to provide for them. And when you do that, just like Joey was saying earlier, in Matthew, it teaches us that you're doing that unto the Lord. You're doing that unto Jesus. So it's not just, hey, I have to do this. Hey, the pastor was telling me. Hey, there's pressure. Hey, there's a really big need. But it's, man, we get to reflect the Lord. We get to be Jesus here on the earth and bring the kingdom of heaven to earth in this way, by bringing kids, bringing older kids even, because many of the programs, there's what's called a Bridges program, 18 to 22-year-olds. You can bring them in. They still have some freedom, but you're helping them get adjusted to life outside of the system. And so now you're actually helping them get jobs and things like that. So there, like James was saying, there's all kinds of different ways that you can get involved. I want to encourage you, and this might sound self-seeking. It is maybe a little bit. Maybe you're like, hey, I absolutely cannot, my house is not fit, I'm not fit, whatever, to bring a child into my home. You can come alongside these foster families. Can I tell you, Brandon and Jess have, 17 kids at this point? If somebody wanted to bring them a meal, man, I'm sure they'd be pretty grateful for it. If somebody wanted to give them a gift card and say, hey, guys, here's $100, go buy your kids some Christmas presents this year, they'd be grateful for it. Especially once they're adopted, you're not getting that stipend anymore. Like, these are just your kids. And with these guys, like I said, 17 of them. It's only 5, plus a couple bonus kids. But maybe you're like, hey, I can't. I'm 80 years old, and I just cannot have somebody in my house anymore. There's just no way for me to care for a baby or a teenager. Support those who are doing the work. Lastly, you can pray. You can pray that the Lord would work through his people. You can pray that God would help churches, including this one, establish systems to care for these kids. There are literally hundreds of kids in Mahoning County in the foster care system, many of whom do not have a home that they're placed with. And so I want to encourage you, get involved. Don't let this just be like that was cool. We had a service where we got to hear from some people doing some really cool things. Let this be a time where the Lord is speaking to you. And I know I'm like way over on time. But lastly, we want to come to the Lord's table today. And so the thing is that this is really a representation of the unity of the body of Christ. This is a representation of how we're now brothers with Christ, and he is inviting us to his table. Today, I want you to think about, the whole panel. I was serious, the whole panel. We'll see. I've got one. In the same way that the Lord invites us to his table, I want you to think today about how you can invite others to yours. That you can invite others to the Lord's table as well. And I mean like literally, bring them to your table, right? House church, bring them to your table. Foster care, bring them to your table. Your friends, bring them to your table. The table matters. And that's not just because I like to eat, although that matters as well. We're inviting people into fellowship with Jesus. When we do this, when we take care of the children, when we minister to their families, we're inviting them into the family of God. We're not just doing this so that we can feel good about ourselves. Can I tell you, any semblance of feeling good about yourself for doing this goes out the door when you've got 2 toddlers screaming. It's just not the way it works anymore. It's hard. But that's what we're called to. We're called to hard things. We're called to invite the lost and the broken to the table of Jesus. And so today we're going to receive this bread and we're going to receive this cup. And we're going to give glory and honor to Jesus, who invites us into his family and invites us to his table. God, we thank you that you laid your life down for us. God, that your body was broken for us. God, we ask that we can reflect that. Lord, that we would lay our bodies down, a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto you. God, this is our reasonable service. God, let us reflect you today to our community, to these children. God, we thank you for your body that was broken. We give you the glory, we give you the honor. In Jesus' name, you guys can go ahead and take the bread. Lord, we thank you. We thank you that it's not by might, that it's not by power, but it's only by your Spirit. That any good that we do, any good that we are, Lord, that it comes from your blood. Your blood that washed us white as snow. God, we thank you for your blood today that was shed for us. God, we give you the glory. You guys can go ahead and take the juice. if the Lord's been ministering to you today, and you're like, man, I don't know where to start, I'm not sure how to do this, but I want to get involved. I want to get plugged into this system. I want to encourage you, find myself, my wife, James, Heather, Brandon, Jess, Jen as well. We want to help you. We want to be a support to you. We've done this. We've gotten licensed, right? Jen's not licensed yet, but she will be. We prophesy that in the name of Jesus. Can I tell you, Jen, man, I'm just so... we have the best first foster care story ever. Literally, like, we got Rocky into our house, and I'm sure Jen was terrified of us. We were terrified of her. Had no clue what we were doing, right? She literally is just so amazing, like Brandon was saying earlier. And God's done such a work in her. Jen, how long have you been sober now? 3 years? Next month will be 3 years. Praise the Lord. 3 years ago, not to share too much of your story, but Jen overdosed, and that's why Rocky ended up in the system. And now the Lord has done such a work in her. She's working for Children's Services. She talks about being a foster mom. She's involved in house churches. She serves in our kids ministry. That's the kind of impact that your involvement can have.